Hello, and welcome to Cooking with Miss Michelle. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Today I'm going to show you how to make a vegetarian shepherd's pie. So, shepherd's pie is basically it's traditionally a meat dish made with lamb. I certainly don't eat those. So, I'm going to substitute the meat with mushroom and lentils, which is a really good substitute for some kind of ground meat, like ground beef or whatever your recipe calls for. It gives it a similar texture, but it's actually a lot more nutrient packed. So whether you're vegetarian or just trying to be a little bit more healthy, this is a great substitute. So it's basically a dish with your protein and vegetables topped with mashed potatoes. So for the mashed potatoes, I'm going to use about 2 to 2.5 pounds of potatoes, any color. You can use white, red, yellow, or purple, or a mixture. And then I have milk and butter. If you want to make this vegan, just substitute your favorite non-dairy milk and butter. I have carrots, corn, and peas. You can use fresh, frozen, or canned. If you want to add cheese, you can do your favorite Irish cheddar. And then I have some garlic, onions, salt and pepper, parsley, thyme, rosemary. I like to add white pepper. You don't really need it. I just think it gives it a nice flavor. So for your herbs, you can use fresh or dried. And then of course I have my mushroom and lentil, and you can use any color of lentils. So I'm gonna start by peeling my potatoes. I already washed everything. So I'm gonna make mashed potatoes, and they're gonna take a little bit of time. So I'm gonna start with that. I'm just gonna peel these, chop them up, and put them in some water. Okay, so I don't need these too small, but if they're a little bit thinner, then they're gonna boil a lot faster than a whole potato. So once I have my potatoes chopped up, I'm gonna cover them with some water, and then I'm gonna boil them till they are soft enough to stick a fork into easily. So they'll probably take about 10 to 15 minutes. And then while I wait for those, I can chop up my onions and mushrooms. And you can use your favorite color onion. So I'm gonna chop these up into pretty small pieces. I wanna get them kind of a similar size as my lentils, maybe not quite as small, but if I keep my fingers on top of my knife, then they will be well out of the way and I won't cut them. And I'm keeping the tip of my knife on the cutting board and just lifting my other hand up and down. This is a pretty safe way to cut. And then I'll chop up my garlic. Okay, and then I will just shred my cheese, so I'll be all ready with everything prepared. Okay, so I'm gonna start cooking everything. So I'm gonna cook everything, and then I'm gonna top it with my mashed potatoes. So I like to use a cast iron pan because I can just do everything in here and then stick it in the oven. So if you have a cast iron or any other oven safe pan, if you don't have an oven safe pan, you can cook everything and then transfer it to like a brownie pan or any kind of baking pan with tall sides. So I'm gonna preheat my oven to 400 while I cook this. And then I always like to start at medium-high heat for onions and mushrooms. And I'm just gonna put some oil in my pan. I'm out of olive oil, so I'm using this hazelnut oil. So when you're cooking, you can always do a substitution if you're out of something, or if you think like, oh, this other ingredient might be really good. So cooking is about being creative. So if you want to try adding something to this recipe, or if you hate onions, don't use them. I think they give it a good flavor when they're cooked. They're not as spicy, kind of bitter as when they're raw. But I always cook my onions and mushrooms together. And I always start with those because they take the longest to cook. And then I add my other ingredients. Like, I'll add like the next longest thing, and then like the thing that takes the least amount of time I'll add at the very end. And I just want to cook these until my onions start looking translucent, and then I can start adding my other ingredients. And I'm actually going to throw my rosemary in now. Whenever I use fresh rosemary, you could take the time to pick this off the stems and chop it up, but what I usually do is just toss it in whole, and then as it cooks, it's going to fall off the sticks, and at the end you can just pull the sticks out. I usually just like to make sure to see how many sticks I have at the beginning, so I know how many to pull out at the end. But if I do that, then it's a lot less work, and it gives it the same amount of flavor. So the other thing about onions that's pretty interesting, they have a very strong flavor when they're raw. So the longer you cook them, the sweeter and less of a strong flavor they will have. So I like most foods, but I try to avoid raw onions. I just think they're too strong, and they kind of steal any other flavor from any other food that they're with. But I always like to add cooked onions to my food, because in my personal opinion, when they're cooked, they do add a nice flavor. So if you're someone who does not enjoy onions, try just cooking them a lot. Cook them to smithereens, and they will become sweeter. You can try them if you still don't like them. That's okay, but you might be surprised at how different they taste from when they're raw, or only, like these are only a little bit cooked. They're still going to have that really strong oniony flavor, but I'm going to cook them really, really well until they're really soft and floppy and delicious. Okay, so my stuff was sticking a little bit, so I did turn my heat down to just below medium. And my onions, they still have a ways to go, but they're starting to get a little bit more soft. I'm going to go ahead and add my garlic and carrots. And I'm going to add some more seasoning. So I like this white pepper. It has a more unique flavor. Some parsley. And if you have dried herbs, if you kind of crush them up and pinch them, it releases a little bit more flavor from the inside of the leaves. And I'm going to do the same thing with my thyme. If you have sage, you can add sage. I am out of sage, so no big deal. I have plenty of other flavors I can add. Some salt, and I will add a little bit of black pepper too. And then I'm gonna add my lentils. And I probably don't need all these. I cooked a cup of lentils and it looks like it just about tripled. So I can save those for another dish later, or a little snack maybe. And then I'm gonna add my can of tomato paste. And I'm just gonna add a little bit of water to help mix that in. Alright, so I can pull my rosemary sticks out. It looks like it didn't actually fall off that much, but I'm sure it'll still taste really good. Usually it falls off really well. I don't know what happened. And this looks like it's cooked pretty well. My onions are nice and soft and clear. So I'm just gonna add my last two ingredients that I'm gonna mix in, my corn and peas. And then I can turn off the heat. I'm just gonna kind of spread this out so it's pretty even. And then my potatoes, when I stick a fork in them, they seem nice and soft, so they look like they're ready to mash. So I'm going to strain the water out of these. Okay, so I'm gonna add some butter and milk to my potatoes and mash these up. So probably just a couple tablespoons. Some people will tell you to add more, but I like to keep it kind of moderate. And enough milk so they will mash into a nice creamy consistency. I'm also going to add some salt and pepper to these. Some people, if you want to get real fancy, you can add some garlic. That's always really good. And I'm going to add a little bit more milk. And then before I top this with potatoes, I'm going to sprinkle my Irish cheddar on here. Try to get it kind of even. Okay, then I'm just going to top the whole thing with my mashed potatoes. And I'm just going to spread them out to make a nice top crust for my pie. And some people like to make it a little bit more fancy. I think it tastes the same either way, but if you want to put like a cool design on there or make peaks with them, you can. I'm just going to spread them out and try to seal up the edges. And then I'm going to cook this in my preheated 400-degree oven. And this is going to take 45 minutes to an hour. I know it seems like a long time, but it is definitely worth it. And I want to cook it until I see some brown on my potatoes. Till they start to brown a little bit on top. And this is really heavy, so it's going to be a two-handed job. So I'll come check this in 45 minutes. Okay, so my shepherd's pie has been in for exactly 1 hour, and it looks perfect. It's a little bit golden brown on top. So I'm just going to pull this out. And I'm definitely going to want to let this cool down before I eat it. I can serve this with some sauteed cabbage or some Irish soda bread or whatever sides you prefer. It looks like I'm gonna have a lot of leftovers, which is good because it's actually a little bit better the next day. So thanks for watching my video. I hope you like this project, and happy shepherd's pie baking.